Panchakapatrubhya Ashtakripa Shandaveva Chapudi Nampavana Vaishnava Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuktalai Srimati Bhakti Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Mane Vichane Nirvishishishanvari Deshtane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashri Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. Actually, at that time, they were called Dabirakash and Shakar Malik, and they were the ministers in the government of the Nawab Hussain Shah, the Sultan of Bengal, in the 16th century. This is at the beginning of the 16th century. End of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th century, Sultan of Bengal, Nawab Hussain Shah. His home minister, private secretary was Dabir Kash. His name before was Dabir Kash was Rupa Goswami, Santosh and Amar. And the finance minister of all of Bengal, was his name was Shakar. He was given the name Shakar Malik, Dabir Kash and Shakar Malik. Santosh, his name was from birth, and we'll hear today that he was given the name Sanatana Goswami by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and initiated. So Mahaprabhu had, in his attempt to go to Vrindavan, he had left Jagannath Puri and traveled back to Bengal, and meeting the banks of Ganga, he journeyed all the way from south of Bengal, all the way along the banks of Ganga to North Bengal, going via Bidanagar, which is on the western bank of Ganga. And there, all of the residents of Navadip and Odiya, they crossed the Ganga and came and they took darshan. He remained there for 4 or 5 days, delivering all of the classes of people, particularly those who were not able to take full advantage of Gaudanga's appearance and presence in Navadip Dham when he was performing his Sankirtan pastimes. So scholars and atheists, Shaktas and Smartas, etc., they all came and they were able to get delivered by taking darshan of Gaudhari and hearing his instructions. Then carrying on to Ramkeli, the name of the place is called Gold, G-A-U-R, Gold. Still now you'll find that there's Gaur Bengal University there, many things. But for this reason, because the capital was called Gold, so therefore that name actually came from the Shain dynasty, Hindu kings prior to the Mughal invasion and occupation of Bengal, Gold. So Gold was the capital, and therefore it's Gaudadesh. And therefore, Gauda Hoite Vaishnav, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are called Gaudiya Vaishnav, Gaudiya Mott. Shashi Thakur established Gaudiya Mott, and followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaudiya Vaishnav, and it's called Gaudadesh, Bengal, Gaudadesh, East Bengal, West Bengal. Because that town, the name of that town is Gauda. So Mahaprabhu, he, of course, we don't hear in advance, we don't particularly hear him mentioning that he wants to go to the capital of Bengal and perform Harinam Shankirtan, although he does that. But that doesn't seem to be a specific objective. Rather, his objective is to return to Bengal to associate with the Gaudiya Vaishnav devotees he was missing their association because they were coming for Rath Yatra and spending time in Jagannath Puri, but not all of the devotees from Bengal. Sachimata wasn't coming to Jagannath Puri. And Mahaprabhu wanted to associate with the devotees in Bengal and associate with Maganga. Bansha Kalpa Toru Shri Gauri Shundora Janabira Bansha Punna Kori Nironto. He's constantly interested. Janabira Bansha, the desires of Maganga, Janabira Bansha Punna Kori, to fulfill Nirantor, constantly. Sri Sachinandan Gaudhari is always interested in fulfilling the desires of Ma Ganga. He's Vancha Kalpa Taru. He's a desire fulfilling tree. So in order to fulfill the desires of Ganga, Mahaprabhu returned to Bengal and reached Ramkeli, reached the goal, the capital. The Ramkeli is a small village just on the outskirts of the capital, Gold. And that's where Rupa and Sanatana were residing, and when they first met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, this created quite a spectacle, so much so that Mahaprabhu's arrival in Ramkeli had attracted the attention of the Nawab Hussain Shah, the Sultan of Bengal, and he sent his chief constable of police. And he gave a report. The Nawab asked questions. What's his form? What does he appear? What's his body? What's his appearance? What's his activities? What does he eat? How does he sleep? These different questions. And so that constable of police, he gave his report that he'd seen so many mendicants. You could just imagine the capital city of Bengal 500 years ago. You could imagine how aristocratic and cultured that place was, and how many extraordinary spiritual gurus and prophets, and so many extraordinary, everything would have been happening there in Gaur, the capital of Bengal, 500 years ago. So that constable, he mentioned that he's seen so many saintly persons, so many sannyasis, so many mendicants, but he's never seen a mendicant like this. He's like, rather than a mendicant, he's more like a prince who, having associated with a self-realized Paramahansa, lost interest in family life and is taken to the path of renunciation and is wandering from one place to another. And he described his beautiful bodily features. The Nawab asked, what's his features? What does he appear like? And the constable of police, he's describing the transcendental form of the Lord, how his face is like the rising of millions of moons. And his eyebrows are like Cupid's upturned bows. His eyes were like lotus petals stretching back to his ears. His lips were the color of red coral, and his teeth were like shining pearls. His neck was like a lion. His chest like an elephant, and he's wearing a beautiful reddish cloth like the color of the rising sun. His body is constantly erupting in palpitations like a ripened jackfruit. And the most extraordinary thing, the constable of police explained, the most extraordinary thing is that within every hour, he collapses to the ground unconscious more than 100 times. So basically, he's falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up in love of Godhead. And hundreds of thousands of people had gathered. They'd gathered all the way along the path in Bengal and joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing his Sankirtan. They lost interest in returning home. They forgot where their home was. forgot where their home was. Being overwhelmed, just seeing Gaudhari perform his Sankirtan in Ramkeli on the banks of Ganga. So then there was this Nawab, he's making his report, and then the king, he's astonished. Of course, the chief of constable is making his report, and the Nawab is astonished, just hearing the glorification. Actually, through the lips of the constable of police, Gaudhari is glorified. Yatra gayanti madhvakta tatra tishtami narada. Glorifying the Lord is devotional service. And where the Lord is glorified, yatra gayanti madhvakta tatra tishtami narada, there the Lord appears. Naham vaikunta naham Tishtami Vaikunte, Yogino Hridaye Shiva. I'm not in Vaikunta. Naham Tishtami Vaikunte, Yogino Hridaye Shiva. I'm not in the heart of the yogis. Yatra Gayanti Madbhakta. Yatra Gayanti, where my devotee is glorifying me, Yatra Gayanti Madbhakta, Tatra Tishtami Narada. There I am present, Narada. So simply doing his duty and responding to the inquiries of the Nawab, the police constable, was giving a report, a description of Gaudhari, but actually he was glorifying with his lips. He was glorifying, and this is devotional service. So he was purified, and just by hearing this glorification of this description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Nawab was also purified. Poshupaki Jure, the Poshupaki, the beasts and the birds cry. Pashana Bidore, the stone mounts. Shuni Jara Gunagata, Shuni Jara Guna, hearing their qualities can melt stone. Hearing their qualities can make the birds and the beasts cry. So in this way, the Nawab's heart was softened, and he made a declaration, a profound declaration, as the king and the sultans do such things. He said, I declare that this sannyasi, he can go wherever he likes, he can say whatever, he can preach whatever he likes, he can perform Shankirtan, he can do whatever he likes, and no one should interfere with him in any way. No one, regardless of who they are, police constable, Kaji, a superintendent, a government official, no one can interfere with him in any way. And if they do, I will destroy them and their family. It's quite amazing. It was asked, I think, last week, why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't personally go and visit the Nawab. Well, what can we say? He had a deep relationship with Pratapurudra Maharaj in Jagannath Puri. He met other Mughal leaders and kings, actually, in journeying from Puri to Gold. He met other kings. However, the Sultan of Bengal is not discussed. Mahaprabhu is not discussed. He's not discussing about that, and we'll hear that his main interest is in speaking and delivering Rupa, in inspiring Rupa and Sanatana. So even though the Nawab had made that declaration, still because in the Nawab's government there were many Hindu ministers. The reason being because they were very intelligent. The Hindus in Bengal, Brahmins, and very intelligent. The Kayashtas, very, very intelligent. And also having been surrounded with ministers who were the Hindus, therefore there's less likelihood that such ministers conspire to overthrow the emperor and the sultan, because they wouldn't be able to occupy the throne. So therefore, his confidence and his intimate associates are Hindu ministers, and in that way he's protected, his position is protected. So the Hindu ministers who were in the high-level ranking officials in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah, they began to discuss. They were concerned because last week we showed the pictures of the columns from the temples of Odiya, the temples of Lord Vishnu, and other Devi temples in Udkal. And these Nawab, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami directly mentions that he just plundered and destroyed thousands of temples in Odisha. And you can see that the pillars that he brought back from the Odiya style sculpture, from the columns in the temples, he brought those pillars back and as booty to display how he conquered so many provinces and destroyed so many temples. So they were concerned that at any moment his mind may change, or he may be influenced by somebody, Asat Sangha, someone may influence him. His mind may change, and in that way be a great concern. That again, it could be concerned for the welfare of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and never know, who knows what's going to happen. So in this way, they decided to send a Brahmin messenger with a message to tell Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that perhaps now it's time to move on. Sufficient Shankirtan performed here. Gauranga Shishachinandan Dvijamani, he was present in Ramkeli for some days. Some days he's present there. News had gathered and people were coming and taking his darshan. And he was performing Shankirtan, and he made that extraordinary prediction at Ramkeli when there was some concern about the movement. He made the prediction, Pritipiti Ache Jota Nagaradigram. On this planet, Jota Nagaradigram, however many towns and villages there are, Pritipite, on this planet. Pritipiti Ache Jota Nagar, Shabatra, Shabatra, in all of them. Prochar, hoibe monam, my name will be preached. So it's very important. Mahaprabhu made that statement. So it seems that very night, after making that statement, that very night, in the middle of the night, Adoratre, in the middle of the night, because they didn't want to draw attention to the fact that such highly positioned ministers in the government were going to see this mendicant. They didn't want that to be known. They didn't want that to be publicized because that may put into danger, maybe put into risk the circumstance, the Mahaprabhu. If such important men are going to see him, that could create concerns amongst the government leaders. So they went in the middle of the night. And naturally, such concerns would be there because we'll see after this one meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they lost complete interest in carrying on with their careers and their work in the government. And we'll see it here. We'll see Rupa Goswami just left, and shortly after that, Sanatana Goswami was also. So it did. Naturally, such important men visiting the sannyasi, mendicant, and in this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Lord. Naturally, that would be a cause of concern. And rightly so, because after that one meeting, everything was finished. The government, he lost his prime minister and finance minister. To see how powerful association is. They completely, although they'd been for decades, they'd been in that situation. So we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is 166. Around about 166, 167, 160. It's 177, I think it is, 177. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 1, text 177. We're discussing. So Rupa and Sanatan came in the middle of the night and falling down with straw in their teeth. Dante Trina Dori, who was straw in their teeth and a cloth wrapped around their neck, and they fell down. And then Mahaprabhu was saying, get up. And then they get up and then with folded hands and they're offering prayers. They're offering prayers and glorification of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jai Jai, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Doyamoy, Patit Pabon, Jai Jai Mahashai, Patit Pabon, Savior of the fallen, Mahashai, O great soul, Doyamoy, O full of mercy, Jai Jai, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, all glories to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Savior of the fallen souls, who's full of mercy. Now they introduce themselves. This is very interesting. Nicha Jati, Nicha Shangi, Potit Odhom, Kubishai Kupe, Pori Gornyanu Janam. It's actually from chapter 20, this verse, but we're discussing it here. Nicha Jati. When they introduce themselves, we may go the first time they're meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but it's interesting that there's a map. We'll show it a little later. We may show it next week. Or next week, I think we won't have class. I think next week is Vyasa Puja. So probably we won't have class. There'll be Vyasa Puja programs going on. So we'll show it sometime, the map. And actually, this where Rupa and Sanatan were born, a place called Joshore, Ramshala Joshore, in East Bengal, near Kulma, Joshore. Rupa Sanatana and City Tirtha, we have an ISKCON center there. So from there to Ramkelly to Gold is quite a distance. Actually, it's closer to Mayapur. Their birthplace is closer to Mayapur. However, it appears that they didn't go to Mayapur to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's very interesting because actually Rupa and Sanatana Goswami will hear Mahaprabhu himself today. He'll explain that they're the eternal associates of the Lord. In other words, they're Nitya Mukta, Nitya Siddha. They come here to this world. They take birth not as a result of accumulated karmas and unfulfilled material desires. They take a material body, which we do. We take birth because we have unfulfilled material desires, which are forcing us again to accept another body with senses to try to fulfill those desires. And there's so many accumulated karmas, both good karmas and bad karmas, that force us to accept another body. That's called the cycle of repeated birth and death. However, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they took birth, they appeared not as a result of the previous karma or as a result of unfulfilled desires, getting a body to fulfill desires. No, they are Nitya Mukta. Nitya Mukta means eternally liberated soul. Nitya Mukta, Nitya Siddha, eternally perfect being. and they appear, they take birth together only for the purpose of carrying on in the mission of the Lord and serving the Lord's mission. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Shayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. The Pranam mantra and glorification of Srila Rupa Goswami explains that Sri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam. Sri Chaitanya Mano Abhishta. Abhishta means the desire. It's a very elegant Sanskrit word, also in high class Bengali. Sri Chaitanya Mano Abhishtam, Abhishto, the desire, the heartfelt desire, Mano Bishtam. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam, the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ishtapitam, Jena Bhutale, Ishtapitam, to establish that, to fulfill that, Jena Bhutale in this world. So Rupa Goswami, he appeared to fulfill the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this world. And we'll hear over the next sessions, we'll hear how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he empowered Rupa Goswami, instructed Rupa Goswami. Ichai Goshai Jabe Braja Koila Vash Radha Krishna Nitto Lila Gorila Prakash. Mahaprabhu is explaining that he's as a result of the appeal and the request of Sachimata, he's trapped, or he's not trapped, but he's kept in Jagannath Puri. That's the desire of Sachimata, because she can remain alive hearing the news. Each year the devotees would come from Bengal, they would come to Puri and then they would return. So in this way Sachimata was able to hear news of Nimai, and she was able to keep herself alive in that way. So for that reason, Gauranga Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was residing in Jagannath Puri, but his mission was to revive all of the holy places in Vrindavan. Now we'll hear when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally visited Vrindavan, there were no temples like we have now, and the holy places, Keshigat, Banshigat, Govardhan, Radhakund, Govardhan, these places were not identified. These places were identified by the 6 Goswamis who were sent to Vrindavan by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. H.I. Goshai Jabe Braja Koilavash. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Gorila Prakash. H.I. Goshai Jabe Braja. They went to Vrindavan. Braja Koilavash. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Gorila Prakash. The Radha Krishna Nitya Lila, which has become forgotten. The places of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, which now in Vrindavan are so well known, these had become forgotten and lost. And the Goswamis, in their residing in Vrindavan and meditating, they revealed, they realized, they were able to see these places. Kabe Bhakti Rashashtra Karayalikon Chaitanya Kota Shune Kabe Chaitanya Chinton describes, actually in this section. We'll hear it described this week or next week. The description that devotees would go from Bengal, they would go to Vrindavan. And upon coming back, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would inquire, how are Rupa Sanatana? Aniket duha bone jotta brikagon ek briket tole ek ratre shayan. Aniket, they don't have a house. Duha bone jotta brikagon, however many trees there are in the forest, ek briket tole ek ratre shayan. Each night they lie down underneath of one tree, and then the next night they go to another tree. Kavi Bhakti Rashashtra Kodayalikon, and they write the devotional scriptures like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and the Bhakti Rasa, the Upadeshamrita, Uchala Nilamani, so many books. Kavi Bhakti Rashashtra Kodayalikon, Chaitanya Kota Shune, the discussion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kavi Chaitanya Chintan, and sometimes just think about the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So being highly qualified, the Goswamis, they were able to see the transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan and describe those in the Goswami Grantha, in the literatures of the Goswamis. In the same way, 5,000 years ago, Sri Narad Muni, he approached Vyasadeva. When Vyasadeva was lamenting, Vyasadeva, he actually had compiled so many Vedic literatures. He compiled the Vedas, he'd written the Vedas. Before that, they were in the mantra form, Shruti mantra. So he compiled them into the 4 Vedas as we know them. He also compiled the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra, the conclusion of the Upanishads. He also compiled the Itihas, the histories, including Mahabharata, and he also compiled the Puranas. So therefore he's called the literary incarnation. Mahamuni Bedvyas, who came to establish the literary form of the Vedic knowledge. However, Srimad Bhagavatam describes that in chapter 5, canto 1, that even in spite of such an effort, such a tremendous effort in providing transcendental literature, still he was not satisfied. So at that time, Narad Muni came and began to instruct him, and he explained that actually you've given too much emphasis to karma kanda, to the ritualistic and regulative activities which give you punya and ensure your subsequent elevation to heavenly planets and prosperity in this life. You've emphasized that too much in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in the Vedas and Puranas. Of course, the Upanishads are the Jnana Kanda, meant for liberation, but they're not easy to understand. Even when Mahaprabhu met with Ishwarapuri in Gaya, Ishwarapuri, his guru, explained that Murga Tumi Tomar Nahika Vedanta Adhikar. You're a fool, you have no qualification to study Vedanta. Krishna Nam Japashara Mantra Shah, just chant the holy name of Krishna. That's the essence of all the Vedas. So even the Upanishads, not easy, even the Vedanta Sutra, which is commentary on Upanishads, Ishwarapuri said that Mahaprabhu couldn't even understand. Of course, he's God, he can understand everything, but to indicate to us that the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra are not possible to understand in Kali Yuga, rather the natural commentary on the Vedas, on Vedanta Sutra, is Srimad Bhagavatam, written by the same author. And in this way, being inspired by Narad Muni, Vyasadeva, he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam to describe in detail the pastimes of Krishna. Krishna Lila Bhagavate Kohe Bedvyas, Krishna Lila Bhagavate Kohe Bedvyas, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The pastimes of Krishna, just by hearing that, just by hearing Srinvatam Sakata Krishna, Punya Shrabana Kirtana, you get all of the benefits of punya, which means vanashram dharma and other prescribed activities for getting good results. You get all of that just by hearing about Krishna, just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shrabana Kirtana. You, by Shraban Kirtan, by hearing and chanting about Krishna, you get all of the results of karma, of prescribed duties, and vanashram dharma, pious activities, charities, sacrifices, etc. You get the results of all of those activities just by Shrabana Kirtanam Srinvatam Sakata Krishna, hearing and chanting about Krishna, and that's Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, on that note, we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam that even Krishna inspired Yudhishthira Maharaj to perform 3 Ashvamedha Yagyas, the horse yagya, a sacrifice involving a horse. Maharaj Yudhishthira performed 3 of those Ashvamedha Yagyas, and in order to purify himself from reactions incurred during the Battle of Kurukshetra. So Prabhupada explains that the Ashvamedha Yagya, it can purify one of even killing a Brahmin if you perform this yagya. Of course, you need a lot of money, you need priests, highly qualified priests, and such an arrangement. Therefore, it's not the recommended process for the aged. And Nam Sankirtan is the recommended process of sacrifice, the Sankirtan Yagya. Krita Yadjaitam Vishnam Tretayam Yajito Mogai Dwapare Parishchayam Yat Kalo Tat Tadikirtanat. The same result which was achieved by meditation in Satya Yuga, by Jagya in Treta Yuga, by temple worship in Dwapara Yuga, is achieved in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the whole name of the Lord. So this Ashvamedha Yagya was there in the previous ages, and one would derive great punya from that. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Navadip Dham Mahatmya, he describes that how glorious is visiting Navadip, that even if you come to Navadip, and if you walk around Navadip, Navadip Brahmite Jay Pode Pode Pai Koti Ashvamedha Paul Sharvashastra Gai, that Navadip Brahmite, if you walk around Navadip Brahmite, you're walking around Navadip, there's anybody, whether you're chanting Hare Krishna or not, is not required. You may not be chanting Hare Krishna when you're walking around. Just Navadip Brahmite, just walking. Jay Pode Pode Pai, what you attain with every step. Koti Ashvamedha Paul. 10 million Ashvamedha Yagyas. You get the fruit of 10 million Ashvamedha sacrifices with every step you take in Navadip Brahmite, wandering around Navadip. So no need to worry about Ashvamedha Yagyas and other types of ritualistic performances, and even karma, even the Banasham Dharma, these things. You just come to Navadip and walk around. You come to Navadip and walk around, you get the fruits of all of these efforts. So it's interesting. Yeah, we were discussing. It's interesting that such a special place, and Rupa and Sanatan they're not so far away, just a few hours away in East Bengal, Joshua, their birthplace. They went to the capital of Bengal. They remained there in employment of the Nawab, but they didn't come to Navadip, which is very interesting considering that they're eternal associates of the Lord that appear just to associate with him and serve him. And they don't come and participate in his Navadip Leela. Isn't that interesting? They're not far away in East Bengal. They're not far away. The age, we can see already they're quite mature now. Even they could be older. I'm not sure the age. Maybe older. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sannyasi. He took sannyasi when he was 24. And he journeyed South India 2 years. And then so he's 28 years old, around 28 years old. Rupa and Sanatan must be older than 28. They're already in positions of such importance in the government. So they've already been there and their careers are well established. So they're older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sanatan Goswami is older than Rupa Goswami. So they could have come and seen Mahaprabhu's Vidya Lila, seen Bal Lila, Mahaprabhu's marriage, Mahaprabhu's sannyas. They could have been there. Why they weren't there? They're eternal associates. Kamala Manjari, Rupa Manjari, an eternal associate of Sri Radhika, intimate associate, confidant of Sri Radhika, and Mahaprabhu's there in the form of Sri Radhika and Gadadhar Pandit. But they didn't come and join in the Sankirtan in Navadip. That's very interesting. What can we say? It's not discussed by the acharyas, but all we can say is that because Mahaprabhu had a different plan for them. Mahaprabhu had different services for them. Maybe, anyway, they came to Puri on occasion from having gone to Vrindavan. They came and visited Mahaprabhu in Puri on several occasions. But it's very interesting how the Lord has a plan for all of us. Similarly, Narottam, Thakur Mashai, and Shamananda, and Srinivasacharya, also intimate eternal associates of the Lord. They appeared the generation after. They didn't associate with Vrindavanash Thakur. He didn't see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He appeared after. He's a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu. He didn't see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So very interesting. So similarly, we have our ISKCON, we have Srila Prabhupada, Mahabhagavata, the great Acharya who's come to deliver the world. And Prabhupada's disciples next week, the Vyasa Puja, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj next Saturday. A very intimate and an eternal associate of Srila Prabhupada who comes just to serve Prabhupada and help establish his mission. So many special eternal associates that appeared to associate with Prabhupada and serve him. However, we can also propose and assume that there are other eternal associates of Srila Prabhupada who appeared after him. We can assume. Why not? The example is there in Gaur Leela. Many eternal associates, Vrindavanash Thakur and Narottam Thakur Mahashai, Shamananda Srinivas, they appeared the immediate generation after. We may say, oh, so close, just a few years earlier, they could have associated with the Lord. But the Lord has plans. Sometimes he sends his intimate associates to come after his appearance in order to help establish his mission and carry on his mission. So this is the plan that Mahaprabhu had for Rupa and Sanatan, not to meet and associate with him in Navadip, but to the first meeting here in Ramkelli. Now, it's very interesting that these different associates of the Lord, just like in Puri we were discussing about Srila Haridas Thakur, such a special devotee. Mahaprabhu personally came, carried his body and placed his body in Samadhi. Such a special devotee, such a dear devotee. Mahaprabhu would personally, each day after taking darshan of Lord Jagannath in the temple, Mahaprabhu would go to the Siddha Bakula and associate with Srila Haridas Thakur, such an exalted devotee. And he had such humility. When the devotees first arrived from Bengal and after Mahaprabhu returned from the 2 years of South India, and many devotees, and Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, he's enumerating, he's describing all the devotees who have come from Bengal. And then Mahaprabhu says, where is Haridas? Where is Haridas? And the devotees say, oh, he's still on the road. So I mean, he'd been there for 20 minutes, half an hour. All of these devotees are coming closer, and Mahaprabhu is seeing them, embracing them, discussing. Where is Haridas? He's still on the road. He's still lying on the road paying obeisances. And he's not going to come here because he's afraid. Haridas Thakur is afraid that if he comes close, Mahaprabhu's Gambhira is near the Jagannath temple. So the devotees had gathered in Mahaprabhu's room. They gathered to see him. And where's Haridas? He's still out there on the road. What? He's not going to come here. He's afraid that if the Jagannath pujaris, if the servants of Lord Jagannath, if they touch him, they'll be polluted. If they see him, so he's not going to come. This is the genuine humility of Haridas Thakur. He's thinking that he's the Namacharya, he Lord Brahma. He Lord Brahma, Brahma avatar, as mentioned Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord, the incarnation of Lord Brahma, who's given his life, Namacharya, Acharya, the topmost designation in the Arya Samaj, in the Sanatan Samaj, Acharya, Guru Acharya, specially empowered Guru, Haridas Thakur, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur. Mahaprabhu is again given the name. That person, he's not even coming close to the Jagannath temple. I mean, we don't go in, we're not allowed in because of white skin. Rupa and Sanatana and Haridas Thakur, and then the three of them never entered the Jagannath temple in order to not create any turmoil, out of humility, because Rupa and Sanatana had taken the engagement of the Moguls. They're wearing their dress, accepted their name. They did not enter Jagannath temple, considering themselves rejected from the Sanatan society. And Haridas Thakur, not born in the Mogul family, but so special. They're so dear. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's taking these great devotees from this birth, low birth. He's taking them and espousing the principles, establishing the principles of his movement. Dinna hinna jota chilo, hariname udharilo. Dinna hinna jota. However degraded you can possibly be. Dinna hinna jota chilo, hariname udharilo. The holy name can deliver you. Tashaki jogai madhai. So this character of Haridas Thakur, this genuine humility, and it's not that like we do. In ISKCON, you're meant to be humble. So we introduce ourselves with humility. I'm not qualified to give the class. I'm the most fallen. But actually, we don't believe that. We don't actually believe that. We say that. But in ISKCON, that's the parlance. You have to say that, oh, Prabhu, I'm the most humble. I'm the most fallen. You have to be humble. I'm not qualified. It's all false what you're saying. It's not true. I'm full of material. We say that in ISKCON. But actually, we don't believe that. We believe, no, I'm a little more advanced than the average person. That they're just completely absorbed in materialistic activities and sinful activities. I'm a little more progressive. I'm practicing Krishna conduct. That's what we believe. But we say that, no, I'm the most fallen. But Haridas Thakur and Rupa and Sanatana, they actually believe, they think themselves to be the most fallen. They actually think themselves to be the most fallen. And that humility, it attracts the attention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so much. Nicha Jati. Our birth is low. Nicha Shangi, we're associating with low people. Our friends and associates are all low. Nicha Shangi. Potit Odom. Potit, we're fallen. Odom, we're the lowest of humanity. Kubishai Kupe Pori. Kubishai Kupe. Kubishai. Bishai means enjoyment. Kubishai means the comfortable life, material enjoyment. Kubishai Kupe. The well of sense enjoyment. Pori, we've fallen into the deep well of sense enjoyment. Goinanu Janame, in this way we've wasted our human lives. This is the first thing that they describe about themselves. Not like us, we go before the Guru or the Sanya, immediately we've got our list of all the things we've done. Oh yes, my son my child is chanting, he chants Vanchakalpaturu, look, he's great. He respects the Vaishnava, we're offering this, I do the bhakti, I do this, I do that, all the good things. All the good things. That's what we'll have on the list, ready to, when someone's introduced, all the good things. You should say this when you're introducing me. Nicha Jati Nichi Shangi Potit Odam. This person is born in a low family. You can introduce me. If you introduce me in the future, you can introduce in this. So Nicha Jati is born in a low family. Nicha Shangi is associated with sinful, low-minded people. Potit Odam, he's the lowest of mankind. Kubishai Kupe is given his life, he's fallen in the life of sense enjoyment. In this way, he's wasted his human life. You can announce me in that way when you're giving the lecture. This is how the Goswamis announce themselves. In fact, Prabhupada's commenting these purports that that he's considering that he's wasted his life, Sanatana Goswami. This statement about how one can become fallen in the material world is made by the greatest authority of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, the greatest authority, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Rupa Goswami, Rupa and Sanatana. Actually, the whole world, Prabhupada's commenting, people are, if they submit themselves, even the most fallen, this is the example, if they submit themselves to the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, they can be delivered. Prabhupada's commenting that one becomes, they were Karnataka, mentions here, they were from the most respectable Brahmin families of Karnataka. Then Bharadvaj, Brahmins Gotra. But because of associating with the Mughal government service, their customs and behavior resembled those of the Mughals. One becomes abominable by adopting abominable profession or by associating with people who are naturally abominable. Rupa and Sanatana as Dabir Kash and Shakar Malik associated with the Mughals, who were naturally opposed to Brahminical culture and cow protection. Because they were employed by the Mughals, their original habits degenerated into those of the Mughals community. Since the symptoms of Brahminical culture were almost nil, they identified themselves with the lower caste. Now, this is very, very interesting. And Prabhupada saying that they were affected by the association, by the customs, by the interaction, by accepting service. They were affected. And Prabhupada is saying that these two, they're the greatest authorities in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, can still be affected. So what to speak of us, who are just normal people, who are struggling devotees, who are just beginning practice of Krishna consciousness. Naturally, we're going to be affected by the asat sangha, by the association of the non-devotees that we're obligated to associate with. So we have to be very careful. It's so much so that we become affected by the association. We don't realize that we're affected. We don't realize that. We think that, no, everything's fine and I'm Krishna conscious and I'm making the right decisions. But actually, we're affected. We can't see that effect. So therefore, we have to be very diligent in the sadhana practice to try to protect ourselves from the influence of the asat sangha. Sangat sanjayate karma, as Krishna explains, one's desires, they develop, they evolve, one's desires are produced by the association one keeps. So if you associate with committed Vaishnavas who are committed to the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the service of Sri Hari and his servants, then you will become affected by that. Sometimes I reflect on how I became a devotee. Well, one thing was that I was not far. I was in the city. Last night we were looking at the morning walks, Prabhupada, in Melbourne Botanical Gardens, 1974, 1975. Prabhupada visited regularly, 4, 5, 6 times, Melbourne, Australia, and spent time in Melbourne. Morning walks, Rath Yatra. Now, I was a young boy. I didn't, same reason why I didn't, even though we've endeavored for decades to give our life to Srila Prabhupada. Actually, he was just a few blocks away in the neighborhood, it's the next neighborhood, next suburb, where our temple, Albert Park, we bought that temple. Prabhupada established that temple. And where I grew up, I was just a few blocks away, not far at all. You could take a 10-minute drive. A 10-minute drive. And I was at that time 74, 75. So I was 10, 11, 12 years old. But I didn't, Prabhupada was there. Subsequently, we've given our life to the mission of Srila Prabhupada. He was so close, but we didn't go. Nor did the Lord. We didn't get inspired. We didn't go and see Srila Prabhupada. But still, sometimes we lament, but still, just like the electrical current, it plugs into the wall, the electrical current, the wire, it goes, and then you plug something into that end with a extension cord. It's as good as plugging it into the wall. It doesn't have to be right in the wall. You can have it long distance away. So I never met Prabhupada personally, but in Melbourne, I went to the temple that Prabhupada opened, and I met his disciples. And I never met people like that before, that actually had spiritual life, that they're taking their life has a purpose. This human life, they got the human body for a reason, to awaken their love of Krishna, to revive their love of Krishna. But most people, everybody that you meet, they don't think that there's a purpose for their life. They think that the purpose of life is to enjoy the senses. I think that in enjoying the senses is the purpose of life. This is ignorance. That's the same level as animals. We get a body, we think the purpose of life is just enjoy the senses. But actually the purpose of life is Kameshan Indriya Priti Labho Jivati Avata Jivasha Tatta Jigyasha Na Arto Cheshta Karmabi. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text number 10, explains the purpose of life. Kamasha Nindriya Priti. Na Indriya Kamasha Nindriya Priti. The life is not meant, na indriya priti. It's not meant for fulfilling your desires, your material desires. Kamasha Nindriya Priti. Labho. Jivata yavataha. In fact, the sense enjoyment, it comes automatically, even if you don't endeavor. Just like every day you get hungry, and then when you eat something, you feel some enjoyment. So you don't have to keep eating. Even in India, my experience, I'm living in India 25 years. My experience in India, in general, the people in general, the average person, for them, eating is very important. Eating is very important. The idea of fasting and missing a meal, that's abominable. That voluntarily not eat, even though the food is available, even when you're not hungry, people eat. Just like not just India, all over the world, but India, you see, eating is very, very important. Eating is very important. It's just like on the train journey in India, eating from beginning to end. People, they come with their tiffin and so many things, and as soon as they get the seat, they pull it out, start nibbling, and whatever comes into the carriage for sale. Moshala muri, this and that, and bhaji, and this, and whatever comes. There's one thing happening, they're eating. The whole journey eating. That's a journey. The journey in India. So it's not that life is just meant to eat and just to enjoy. There's pleasure. You eat the tongue, you enjoy the pleasure, but life is not meant for that. Jiva Shatatta Jigyasha, na Jiva Shatatta, life is meant for understanding, for inquiring. Jiva Shatatta Jigyasha. Jigyasha means to inquire about tatta, about the Supreme Lord and my relationship with him. Jiva Shatatta Jigyasha. Life is meant for understanding our relationship with God. And then Kamashanendriya Prati Labho Jivati Yavata. You can enjoy the senses, Labho Jivati Yavata, as much as is you get just by keeping the body healthy. So you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to bathe. These basic things that you enjoy eating, keeping the body healthy. So that's enough sense enjoyment, which comes automatically. And human life is not meant for just getting more and more sense enjoyment. Sense enjoyment will be there automatically. Human life is meant for understanding absolute truth. So I met such people who had given their life. They were young men. And they're given everything. They're given up there. They're sleeping on the floor in a room with 10, 15 other men, sleeping on the floor every day, going out on Sankirtan and giving their life and meeting the people, being insulted. Even at that time, the devotees, they were terrorized by government officials and police. They were put in jail. But such conviction, such inspiration, such devotion. And when you meet such people, you become affected. You become affected. And you become purified, and Shangat Shanjayate Kama. And similarly, you have desire. When I first met the Acharya, he said, "So, what do I said? I want to serve you. I want to serve you. How is it possible that such a change in attitude could be there? The opposite of the materialistic values. No one wants to be the servant. Everyone wants to be the master." And the education that we get in the college is to enhance that, how to become the master. I want to serve you. How that happened, that change in consciousness by association. So Prabhupada is mentioning here that as a result of association, they become affected. Jagai madai hoite koti koti gun. Adam Patit Papi Ami Dui John. They're saying here that we are Jagai Jagai Hoy Koti Koti millions and millions of times more degraded than Jagai and Madhai. Adam Patit Papi Ami Dui John. We're millions and millions of times more degraded than Jagai and Madhai. So that's interesting also that Mahaprabhu, he delivered Jagai and Madhai before taking sannyas. When he was in Navadip in the household Leela, he was performing Sankirtan, he delivered Jagai and Madhai. So this may have been perhaps 6 years ago, 6 years in the past. And the news of Jagai and Madhai's deliverance had traveled all over Bengal Bhumi, all over Bengal, and had reached the capital. There were no Facebook, internet, etc., WhatsApp messages. This all by word of mouth. So the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were known to Rupa and Sanatana and reached the capital of Bengal. And they're mentioning that we are millions and millions of times more degraded than Jagai and Madhai. And then Mahaprabhu, he responds. He first begins to speak to Rupa and Sanatana. Tumi, Shuni Mahaprabhu Kohe. Hearing these words of Rupa and Sanatana, Shuni Mahaprabhu Kohe. Shuno Dabirkash. Shuno Dabirkash. Tumi Duibai more Puratondash. You two brothers, more Puratondash are my eternal servants. You two brothers are my old servants. So it's not that Rupa and Sanatana, it appears that they're not remembering and they come before Mahaprabhu. Oh, it's us. It's us. We're your old servants. Huh? No, they don't think that. They don't think themselves as eternal servants of the Lord. So like later we'll be hearing the childhood pastimes of Gauranga, Sri Sachinandan. And Jagannath Mishra, he sees the footprints in the cottage with the signs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the footprints. They say, where do these footprints come from? And Sachinandan is wandering around the house. He's not thinking that my son is God. He's not thinking, actually, I'm Nanda Baba, and in the previous life, I was Krishna's father. He forgot completely. Can you imagine? And you're Krishna's father, and then you don't remember any of that? Nanda Baba in Vrindavan, you're Krishna's father. And then he's appearing here in Odiya as Jagannath Mishra. He doesn't remember that he's Nanda Baba. He doesn't remember that. That's not illusion, the type of illusion. We forget God because of the effect of the material energy. But this is the Proto-Maya, Shimantini Devi. In the Dham, she bewilders the eternal associates so that they think that they're ordinary people, so that they can interact with Mahaprabhu in his childhood Leela, and he can be the father and correct him. So Rupa and Sanatana, they're not thinking, hey, it's us. Hey, Godhari, it's us. We come. We're your eternal. They're not thinking that. Mahaprabhu has to remind them. No, you might turn to me, do we buy more Paraton Das? Why he says that? Because they're not conscious of it. Why he says it? Aj hoite duha naam Rup Sanatana danna chara tomar danna fete mormon. And then he changes the names. Aj hoite, from today onwards. Duha Nam, Rup Sanatana, your names will be Rupa and Sanatana. Rupa and Sanatana. Rup Sanatana. He's initiating Rupa and Sanatana. Prabhupada's commenting here. He's initiating Prabhupada comments. This is the initiation. Actually, this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's initiation of Dabir and Shakar Malik. They approached the Lord with all humility, and the Lord accepted them as old servants. He changed their names. It's to be understood that it is essential for a disciple to change his name after initiation. Prabhupada, he's quoting from the Padma Purana, Tapa Pundram Tata Nama Mantra Jaggascha Panchamaha Amihi Pancha Shanskar Paramakanti Heta, the Pancha Shanskar, 5 different aspects of initiation described in Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. Prabhupada's commenting that the tapa is the whole practice of austerity, vows for austerity. Pundram is the tilak, markings. After initiation, one should wear tilak. One should practice the austerities of the disciple. Tapa, pundram, nama, mantra, jagyas. Nama, one's name is changed. And mantra, one is given Diksha mantra, and Jagya, one can perform fire sacrifice, Jagya. Iti Pancha Shankhar, these are the 5 components of initiation. Now in ISKCON, these 5 components are distributed over the 2 stages of initiation. There's the first initiation in ISKCON, where one gets the principles and the change of the name. That's Taparanam and the Pundra and the Tilak. And the mantra and Jagya, they're given in the second initiation in ISKCON, when one receives the Diksha mantra and one can perform fire sacrifices, worship the deities, etc. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is changing the name of Rupa and Sanatana, and Prabhupada is mentioning here that it's essential that once the disciple's name is changed by the Guru at the time of initiation, it's a great boon in one's life if one receives a spiritual name from the Parampara representative. It's a great boon in one's life. Just like I have a legal name. None of you know what that is. It's on my passport. It's on my Aadhaar card. I have a legal name. But I reside here in Mayapur, an association of devotees. I travel amongst devotees. Pretty much I'm with devotees most of the time. And nobody even knows that name or uses that name. So everybody thinks of me as Atul Kṛṣṇa Das. They think of me as that. So that's a great support on my consciousness, that people think of me as Krishna's servant. I introduce myself as Krishna's servant, Atul Kṛṣṇa Das, and they refer to me like that. And that's authorized as a name given by Krishna's dear servant. So that's a great blessing. If one's given a spiritual name, one should use that name. And the name, the legal name, which just came out of a baby's names book, it's a biological name. Using that will put us in the bodily concept of life. So use the spiritual name. It's a great boon. It's a great, and use devotees. Don't use even family members and friends. If the devotee is initiated, you call them by the initiated name. And in this way, you're invoking the mercy of the whole parampara. And as Prabhupada says here, it's essential that the names change at initiation, and therefore why the name should be used, because it's very important in affecting the consciousness. So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa and Sanatana, the first meeting, the humility of Rupa and Sanatana is so extreme. Aha nidra, no, what is that? Nidra hara vahara kaj vijito cha adanta dino. Gopi Bhava Rashamrita Bilahali Kolorara Magno Mahurbandu Rupa Sanatana Ragu Yugo Shijiva Gopalako. Nidra aha, nidra sleep, aha eating, bihar khadi recreation, etc. Vijito, they lost interest in completely. The Goswamis lost interest in eating and sleeping, as we mentioned, sleeping under the tree each night. I mean, that's not how much facility is that? Sleeping under the tree, nothing. There's not even a key, nothing. They're so detached. They're so detached. They lost interest in maintaining their bodies and in eating and enjoying the body. They lost interest in that. They were completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, compiling Bhakti Shastras, discussing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's qualities, his pastimes, establishing the holy places in Vrindavan. Completely absorbed. They forgot about eating. They forgot to eat. They forgot to eat. We're simply always looking at the clock. How many hours before breakfast? How many hours before lunch? The countdown. They forgot to eat. They missed lunch. Oh, did we eat today? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Let's eat tomorrow. They forgot to eat. Nidra ahara viharakari vijito cha atanta dino. And at the same time, they were atanta means excessively dino, humble. Atanta dino, excessively humble. To the extreme, genuine humility. And we'll be discussing in the next session. I'm not sure. I don't think we'll have a session next week because there's Vyasa Puja. But after that, we'll be discussing how that affected, seeing their humility, what effect that had on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that how he's discussing that with the devotees, Gadadhar Pandit and others when he returned to Jagannath Puri. We'll be discussing in the subsequent session. And we can conclude if there's any questions today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Adish.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Adish, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, could you please explain, like, how do we have to introduce, like, When we're introducing a devotee, how do we have to introduce?
Yeah. Well, when you introduce yourself, that's how you introduce Nicha Jati, Nicha Shangi Potit Adon. But even we don't genuinely feel that. But yeah, when you're introducing a devotee, then you glorify the devotee. I had a great fortune over the last several years, many years, to be able to serve in Kolkata Rath Yatra, main stage, master of ceremonies, and I the host for the Bhagavat Katamrit, the speakers. So we would have Bhakti Charu Shami Maharaj, Shilajapataka Shami Maharaj, Bhakti Pushtam Shami Maharaj, other sannyasis, spiritual masters in ISKCON. They would preach, they would give the lecture in the evening and all day, actually, lectures in the morning, lecture in the evening. And I would be, my service is to introduce them on the stage. Now, that's all in Bengali program. We're speaking in Bengali. I remember His Holiness Bhakti Charu Shami Maharaj used to sit on Vyasasan and listen. He derives so much pleasure hearing me introduce him in Bengali. He found that so much pleasurable. He would sit and he would then comment, you listen to these foreign people, how much they are appreciating the culture of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. They're speaking more sweet Bengali than you are. He appreciated that so much. So then I began to get the realization that the Lord likes it when you glorify a devotee. The Lord likes that. The Lord likes to hear his devotee glorified, just like on we have Vyasa Puja coming up next week. The responsibility of disciple to glorify the spiritual master. So when you introduce, you glorify, you try to understand what this person has done to spread Krishna consciousness, what this person has done out of welfare for all of humanity, or at least what this person, how this person has affected you in your life. So that is how, and you glorify. And Krishna is very pleased when you glorify a devotee.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you said there is something called real humility, realized humility, and artificial humility. So we in ISKCON, we definitely will live in a world of, we want to go to realize humility, but what are the main factors we can think of?
Well, everything that we're doing, main factors, everything contributes to purification of Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy name, you're hearing the qualities of such great souls. When we hear these qualities of Rupa and Sanatana, there's more on this. We're just in the middle of that. We'll hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorify their humility. And he's saying that they're so qualified, they're so intelligent, they're so expert, they're so wonderful characters, and they think themselves so unqualified. So that attracts me so much. So when we hear about these qualities, when we hear about these great souls, when we hear about great acharyas and their great achievements, and then we consider how insignificant we are and how unqualified we are, that comes from realization. When we look at ourselves, Jogita Bichar Kichu Nahi Pai. Examine, you want to know your character, then you think of yourself before you were a devotee, the default settings, before you came to the devotional life, the default settings, your character, your behavior, and that's pretty much who you are. And now what you've become as a result of your Krishna consciousness, Jogita Bichar Kichu Nahi Pai. If I examine myself, I find nothing of value. Toma Karunashar. Your mercy is everything. So whatever qualities, whatever we've been able to imbibe and whatever we've been able to achieve in Krishna consciousness is only the mercy of Guru. It's who's trained us, who's empowered us, who's purified us, who's engaged us. So any good quality is not to our credit. Any good quality is a result of the sadhus that have shown mercy upon us. And when you take that away, our natural personality is full of bad qualities. So these are some tips on how to try to remain humble. Amanina manadaina. Amanina, not expecting any respect for oneself. Amanina manadaina, being ready to give all respect to others. Kirtaniya sada hari. In this state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Couple of other questions, are there?
Dharmendra ji, what's your question? One, two, three, four. Hema Mataji, what's your question?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna to all devotees. Prabhuji, one question is concerned that I have read in Sanatan Goswami when he was living in the Bengal. So he was living in a house and there he developed a mini Vrindavan. So is it true in the house only during the Bhagavatam classes? And second question, when the communication used to take place between the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatan Goswami and the Rupa Goswami while living in the Vrindavan, they used to write the letters also, and letters were also exchanged. So are that letters are preserved? And one more question, don't, if you have time, then you answer. This is regarding the, like today, my take from your class is that how we can advance in the Krishna consciousness and what is the relation of the Guru with the devotees like Sanatan Goswami and the Rupa Goswami. Okay, so offline association of the spiritual master and the Guru, that is more influential than the online association. But we ladies, suppose we are binded with our household duties also, so we don't get time for the offline association. Okay, either in the temple or there. So is it that the ladies, they advance lesser as compared to the male, because male can give more time offline association in the temples and the
Few questions here, Hema. Let's just take one question at a time here. The first one, yeah, they had a place that was called Gupta Vrindavan. That's in Ramkeli, and that's they resided there. And even you can find that Rupa Goswami was already writing books even before this meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were already engaged in Krishna consciousness at that time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. That was the first question. Second question was about
The letters.
We'll discuss that in the next session. Mahaprabhu mentions that there was some correspondence, and what was written in that letter we'll discuss in the next session. But I don't think those letters. Maybe someday someone will come up. They'll appear, and they'll have to be, graphic and analyzed if they're actually authentic. And the letters, we have letters from Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. We have letters from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We have in the Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Kolkata, you can find the notes that Thakur Bhaktivinoda was writing for the Gaur Arti, and even he's scribbling out and changing words. It's very interesting. You can find some versions of the Chaitanya Bhagavat written by Vrindavandas Thakur, handwritten in a place called Denur here in Bengal, where he wrote the Chaitanya Bhagavat. There's other things. There's handwriting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can find the handwriting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I think, in Ambika Kalna, in the temple there. They have some manuscripts of, I think it's a Bhagavatam. So, but yeah, this book, maybe one day someone will come up with the Prabhupada's manuscript of Bhagavad Gita that was lost in 1966 in New York, never recovered. Sometimes someone's going to maybe appear with that Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita manuscript from 1996, which was stolen or lost. So, yeah, but these letters are not there. And then regarding association, well, Hemo, yes, of course, if you can directly associate what we were discussing in Mamgachi a couple of weeks ago during Parikrama, that Vasudev Datta Thakur, even if the air that had passed over his body, if you came in contact, if the air that had touched his body came in contact with you, you'd be purified. Love of Godhead. So associating with the person directly is very powerful. Bapu Shanga, Darshana Pavitra hoye eto magun. Just by going and seeing the person, you're purified. Just by seeing them with your eyes and being close to them, certainly you're purified. So if you at least once a week, try and associate with devotees. Hema, at least once a week, come and associate with devotees. See the deity, bow down, dance in the temple. If you can't do that, if you can't do it every day, at least once a week or as much as you can. And if you can't do the direct association, certainly online association. I mean, we're giving the class here every Sunday morning. It's not a waste of time. It's not a complete waste of time. Obviously, there's some benefit. Otherwise, you wouldn't be joining every week. And so there's definitely benefit, but it's more benefit if you can get the direct association. So thank you all very much. Next week, I'm suggesting that we won't have a session because Rath Yatra, there'll be.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Sorry, I unmuted. Yeah.
So next week, I think is Vyasa Puja festival here in Mayapur. I think there'll be class. Guru Maharaj probably will give class on Sunday morning. So that'll be broadcast. So we won't have the session next week. We'll have the session the week after next. We'll carry on from then. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Prabhuji. Thank everybody. Can thank Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for
Thank you.
your
Pranam
Prabhuji.
class.
Prabhuji,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thanks for answering my
Hare
question.
Dandavat pranam.
Thank you very much.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.